Okay. And I should be able to go to my storefront and turn my volume down. Well, that might be an issue. We'll see here. All right. Cool. Michael, can you hear me?
I can. Yep.
Okay, great. Clear. Very good. All right, folks, it is January 17th, 2021. We're kicking off a new year. At 2:00 sharp is my first podcast for Modern Era Warriors, Integrated Warrior Training, America's #1 integrated warrior training, right? Coaching, performance coaching, mindset type coaching, reality-based self-defense, firearms, fitness, nutrition, all kinds of good things. Visit the website at modernerwarriors.com to learn more. But I could not be so excited today to actually be doing this, to be pushing more products, resources, services, knowledge, skills, abilities, and reaching more people. And one of the ways that we're doing that is having the online subscription. And it's about having coaching talks on Saturdays, taping things during the week and providing them live, putting them on our online portal. And it's about bringing experts in the field like Michael Ostrolenk, who I have here today with us. And all different modalities that I deal with, whether it's the coaching or the self-defense fitness, that's what I want to bring in here today. And Michael is so near and dear to me. I can't thank Michael enough for being here for my first podcast. It was actually really important. I wanted Michael here for the first podcast. He's been a coach of mine in the past. And I'm going to go through a little bit of a bio. When I say a little bit of a bio, it's kind of like reading my bio. It just goes to show that growth is 1% better every day in every way, right? And as long as we're continuing to move forward in life, we can obtain unbelievable goals. Knock down the dominoes is what I refer to it. So Michael's been exploring the relationships between post-conventional living, transformational leadership, optimizing health, and regenerative paradigms his whole life. His interest in human growth and personal development began when he was 9 years old, working with psychotherapist Pat Lawson, learning biofeedback, meditation, and guided imagery. We'll go a little bit by decade here. In the 90s, Michael received a master's degree in transpersonal counseling psychology from John F. Kennedy University. He received a postgraduate training, his postgraduate training in somatic psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies. He's also a certified massage therapist, which I never even knew until I looked at Michael's bio. He spent some time in his past positions doing marriage and family therapy. He's been on the board of directors for Health Medicine Forum and was a program or project director there as well for their health panel program. He's been a research assistant for Elizabeth Targ, MD, and Larry Sherwitz, PhD, at the Complementary Medicine Research Institute at the California Pacific Medicine. He's worked with Julie Motz in the late 90s as well, doing some experimental group counseling or training, Michael, using energy medicine. Worked with Len Oates, experimenting with neurofeedback devices called at the time Flex X in the 90s. And a lot of people are using those types of modalities or maybe expanding in those areas today. As we go into the 2000s, Michael joined Ken Wilber as a founding member of the Integral Institute at the time, right? Certified in spiral dynamics under Don Beck, PhD, and Wade Mindsets under Jerry Wade, PhD. So Michael's also a transpartisan social entrepreneur, and an expert in the field of transpartisan public policy, working a lot with government. Michael, you could maybe expand on that a little bit more if you would like. As we move forward in the bio, though, too, Michael has a ton of time dealing with a lot of other partners that I've worked with as well. So Michael, master coach, head instructor at SealFit Unbeatable Mind Academy, working closely with Mark Devine and others there in their inner circle, and all that different aspects that Unbeatable Mind has had to offer, developing the online programming and now coaches. Michael's also a master coach for Spartan 7, Roundtable Phalanx Executive Experiential, and leadership course under former Navy SEAL Dan Cirillo and Chris Smith. And he's also the director of human resilience at Michael, I have Apeiron.
Yep.
So awesome. Very good. Welcome, Michael. Thank you so much. If you wanted to expand on any of that, please do. Please take some time to talk maybe about some of those things and how exciting it's been to maybe, like when you get a coach, it's where I was at one point, to having a dream and a vision and continuing to knock down those dominoes. So can you share your thoughts on your career and how things that were exciting and hard, and any other emotion that you want to share with us?
Certainly. First of all, Dennis, thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be a guest on your podcast, but especially to be your first guest. So I'm touched to be asked, and I really appreciate it. And as you know, I hold you in high regards, and I miss our regular meetings that we used to have pre-COVID, and hopefully post-COVID we can start getting together again in person. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, greatly appreciated. Yeah, for everyone that doesn't know, for some of the work that Michael does and that I do, we're just blocks away from each other prior to COVID. And Michael, I miss those talks too. Great having conversations about coaching or politics or anything going on in life. So please go ahead, share anything else that you'd like with.
Yeah, certainly. So I was really fortunate. You mentioned Pat Lawson. She was my therapist when I was a little kid. And you can imagine this is 1979, a long, long time ago. And you mentioned biofeedback, and the technology was pretty immature back then. But for a 9-year-old kid, it was really, really cool. So it was computer generated. So I got to learn how to raise balloons up on the computer screen as I learned to manage myself. And I was really lucky to have someone like her who taught me guided imagery, meditation, biofeedback, encouraged my martial arts, got me into the martial arts. Like you, I was trained in multiple different martial arts. As a kid, is Taekwondo, of course, because that's almost required by law as a kid.
As a kid, sure. I did too, Michael.
But she really opened up my mind to different ways of living in the world, different ways of being in the world. And although I was a normal kid, I did normal stuff too. But I also had a deep interest, especially as a result of working with her, in nutrition, in Eastern philosophy, in self-management, altered states of consciousness, spirituality. So as an example, I got East West magazine when I was a 10, 11, 12-year-old. My first books were Zen Mind, No Mind by Daiset Suzuki, which I read when I was 9 and 10, but even if I read it now, I probably wouldn't understand it. Probably understood it even less then. But that was one of my first 3 books, also Zen and the Martial Arts, and a book on yoga. So I've always, at least since I was a kid, had an interest in human flourishing, human development, human growth. And it showed up in my life through my schooling, because as you mentioned, I became a psychotherapist, marriage and family therapist, did postgraduate training in somatic and health psychology. So I've kind of integrated a lot of this stuff into my work. And then I transitioned from being a therapist to a coach for various reasons, none that we necessarily have to get into now, except to say that there's some limitations with therapy that I don't have with coaching. And I prefer to work as deeply and widely as possible with clients, which you and I know we'll get into in our discussion. And there's some limitations therapeutically that I couldn't do, but as a coach, I can do a lot more.
Yeah.
And I've just been given so many opportunities to train under and work with some amazing people. You mentioned Mark. I did the 3 Academy. I was 39. I wasn't going into Navy Special Warfare, but I lived with him and about 5 or 6 other young men for about 3 weeks. All of them are now Trident wearing SEALs.
Awesome, Mike.
Yeah, no, it was
Yeah.
like I was the oldest guy. Just being around these young guys, 20, 21, 22, who were just so, I don't want to say gung ho because that's the wrong branch, but they're gung ho.
Full of energy.
Full of energy. Yeah, good hearts, you know. I made it through the Throok Academy successfully. I did the Kokoro camp, which,
Yeah.
you know, is a 50 plus hour no sleep
Yeah.
camp. You know, so I've proved my mettle through SEALFIT, doing all those kind of trainings too. But I've also expanded beyond that as well. And I do work with other coaching companies, as you mentioned, Spartan 7, which does tactical training run by 2 Navy SEALs. So they do all kinds of really interesting tactical training. And then I do the executive coaching between the tactical training sessions. And then you mentioned Aperion Zoe, which is does kind of human optimization, as looking at human beings as a complex adaptive system from a medical point of view, but it's much broader than as we consider medicine today. And I do program development for them. I do coaching for them. So I've just been really fortunate to surround myself with some amazing people, including yourself.
Well, I mean, thank you, Michael.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate that. Hey, you know, one of the things that I'd like you to talk maybe a little bit on how important it is to be around other amazing people, whether that's you hosting, helping an inner circle, or the great people that you work on, the other SEALs, even being through a program with those people that have now gone through the 3-week SEALFIT program at the time, right? To you know, being who they are today in the special ops, et cetera. How important is it to be around people that are challenging you, and having the mentors and the woman when you were 9 years old, right? How important is all this?
At least for me, and I could you know, say for pretty much everyone, but I can't speak for everyone.
Sure.
I think it's hugely important. I think it's so important to surround yourself with people, and they might not be the best in everything, because no one's best in everything. But the more you surround yourself with people who are on the cutting edge of whatever their field is, and or just really good human beings, you know, there's an attractor there. So it makes you want to be a better human being. So if you're around physical specimens, you know, athletes, and you want to be a better athlete. If you're around really smart people in a very particular field, you want to learn more about that field, or at least be smarter in your own field, similar to how they might show up. If you're around emotionally intelligent people who are caring and compassionate and loving, you're like, wow, I want to be more caring, compassionate, loving. So surrounding yourself with people like that is really important for your own growth and development.
So my training is integrated, or your training, referred to it as, right? And I know your training is integrated as well.
Yep.
And really the first, you know, big question that I wanted to cover today for our listeners is why is it important to have integrated training, right? Work with clients in an integrated fashion of the human development, the human growth, starting with someone like, you know, including a medical viewpoint, et cetera. And maybe you can start with a little bit, Michael, on maybe earlier days when you were just doing marriage counseling, or other types of counseling too. Maybe early on you weren't necessarily doing all the things that you do today. Maybe there was a start into that. If there was, maybe share some of that. And go ahead.
Yeah. So there are, I'll say, about 4 foundations or 4 pillars that I use to think about working with my clients: physiological, psychological, social, and environmental. So physiological, psychological, social, environmental. And I find that if you dial in all 4 of those, it's much more likely that your client, or whoever the person is, will thrive in their life, will have the capacities and the skills necessary to take on any challenges that they face. And I'll walk through each of the 4. But you asked me, like, where do these emerge for me professionally over time? And I would say very early on, because I remember even as an intern, as a marriage and family therapist, I had a client, and this is kind of telling on the physiological side, who was having some difficulties in a relationship, I think, with a female. This is like 30 years ago, so I can't remember all the details. It was a male having a difficulty relationship with a female. And I just started inquiring with him about his other aspects of his life, his sleep, his food intake, his movement and exercise. I probably didn't say movement, but his exercise, his diet, etc. And one of the things I found out from him is he's a huge coffee consumer. Like, he drank coffee late into the day because he was so tired. And then, I started thinking like, okay, he's late into the day, he's drinking lots of coffee, he's not sleeping well, so he needs even more coffee. So that whole cycle sets him up to be much more anxious in his life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if he's not sleeping, we know that there's cognitive decline, the whole host of health issues, and it increases his anxiety. So the first thing that came to my mind is, before I can help him develop the skills to communicate better with this particular female in his life, he actually needs to dial in his physiology. Now, I probably didn't think to myself, dial into physiology. That's something more recent I picked up in the past 10, 15 years.
Sure.
But I knew that he needed to get his body in order in order to make the psychological changes necessary. So we actually worked on his diet and nutrition, reducing his caffeine intake, improving his sleep. And as he did that, he became more capable of then dealing with the relationship issue. So even early on, I was kind of thinking a lot more holistically than not,
Awesome.
which makes sense if you look at my past and my training and all that.
Sure, right? Yeah. So in addition to that, Michael, looking at everybody's what they need, I wanted to talk a little bit, maybe, how do you sit down with a client, even though it's someone that's wanting coaching, knowing what coaching can do for them? How do you sit down with them to really examine their physical environment, their business, their career, fun, recreation, personal growth, romance, family, friends, health, finances, business, career? How do you sit down and have these discussions, and then understand, maybe, dial in where they need to be psychologically, environmentally, et cetera?
So I would say for me, there are two equal paths or parallel paths that I take with the client. One is I have a very specific integrated program that they know they're going to do if they work with me, which is those four things: physiological, psychological, environmental, and social and environmental, which I can get into. While I'm working with them on that, which is actually helping them to create an integrated training plan for the year, including journaling and various exercises, also getting to know them, which ultimately is more important than any kind of training plan. So I get to know like how they think, how they show up in the world, their history. And for me, it's twofold: how and why they show up the way they do. So there's various stories that they tell themselves that the world has told them who they are, biographical, cultural, familial, all that kind of stuff we unpack, so I get a better sense of how they see themselves, how other people see them, how the world helps create them to show up in the world. And then so that's why. That's like the stories they tell. And then actually how they show up. And this is important for me in terms of how I actually work with people, because I work with people as an integrated whole: mind, body, spirit, a whole bunch of different aspects of the self. How they show up is like their posture, their breath, their muscle tone, their thinking patterns, their energetics, all these different aspects of themselves, because it's through those multiple pieces that I just laid out that a lot of the change will occur. Because it's great to know your story. It's great for me to know your story, but knowing your story, even if I help you see different depths to your story, doesn't necessarily make changes in your life. Now, sometimes you can have an aha, like, wow, I see differently my own story, and it changes how I interact with myself in the world. That can happen. But a lot of the times, just knowing your story more deeply won't change your behavior, won't change your mindset, won't change your physiology or your psychology. So that's why I work with the how they show up in the world: their breath, their posture, their mindset, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. That's why the kind of this holistic or integrated or more comprehensive approach is so important, because the how, once we start working on the how, needs to be supported by their social community, or what I call their social ecology, to support the changes that they're seeking in their life. Also their environment. Does the environment support the changes or restrict those changes from being made? We can get into that in a second, but that's kind of how I think about working with folks.
Sure. An environment, right? Physical environment, or people that they're with too, right? There's a lot about environments and for people to think about as well, right?
Exactly.
In addition to that, Michael, with it being integrated, and I don't ever like to talk so much about other things. I like to promote like the good things that the integrated training provides. But You know, a lot of other coaches out there, some of those persons might be in or doing integrated training with programs that you're already involved with. You might know about others that are just, doing other coaching. How important, if someone had to make a decision, like to go get a coach today, like to go, to someone that's very specific in a marriage counseling or, similar type of other issue that they're having, perhaps, right? Something that's very dialed in versus integrated training. How important is it to be able to understand, like you mentioned, coffee and other things like that? I mean, would you recommend this like above and beyond any other type of coaching, or are there other instances that you could think about from all your training, knowledge, skills, abilities that you might focus somebody on some very specific coaching for just maybe a short time for something?
Actually, that's a fantastic question. And although I preach and teach an integrated approach,
Mm-hmm.
I do see value with a very specific approach by a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that very specific approach can be supported and made more possible to be a success as opposed to a failure if the client has support in other areas of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, and you know this, when I talk about the physiological, if you're not sleeping well, if you're not eating well, you're not moving, you're not dealing with your stress, making changes in your life, psychological changes, interpersonal changes, is really tough anyways. It's tougher if you feel like crap, if you're not eating
Oh, no
well,
doubt about it, right?
So even if you're having a marriage, let's say you're having a marriage problem, and I suggest you, or someone suggests to you, to go see a marriage and family therapist, as an example, I would also suggest that you also work with someone on your nutrition, you and your spouse, also on movement and fitness, also on stress management. Because if you dial, or at least begin to dial those things in, it makes it a lot easier to work on the interpersonal dynamics, the communication skills, the active listening, all those kind of good things.
And the thing about it, I think, right, that goes along with it is even the coach, right? And the coach might not be an expert in everything or be able to help the client with everything, but having those relationships and having that client go out, I forget the exact word or two. I didn't take a note on that, but you mentioned, having that additional support, right? And that could be going to get a trainer or a nutritionist or going to the doctor to have labs ran, things of that nature, right? And we can go on, whether it's a finance coach, right, or some other aspect of their life too, maybe a specific other type of coach that you bring in that does a couple sessions for the marriage counseling or something like that too, right?
Can I actually speak to that?
Yeah, please.
Because I think you're right on. Financial coach or fitness coach, all those things are really important. The way I like to work is if my clients are working with people like that, or I might recommend those people to work with a client, I work in conjunction with them. So I have talked to my clients' doctors. I've talked to my clients' acupuncturists. I've talked to my clients' physical trainers for that very reason. So we're all as a team on the same page, working in the same direction.
Absolutely. And obviously it's up to, Michael, one of the things that I learned and always at the forefront of my mind is co-creation, right? Asking the client how you can work with them. One of the things is, trying to get them to come up with the answers themselves, right? By good questions. Can you take a minute or two to let everyone know that as a coach, right? And you could add on as a coach and when we're working with clients, how it's, you're not coming to us for the answers, right? The answers are within them, and it's up to us to ask some good questions, some powerful questions to get them to think and basically come up with a lot of the answers that they already have within inside them. What can you add to that?
So ultimately, I want my clients to be able to fire me because they've developed the skills and capacities to deal with whatever they have to deal with in their life, moving forward in a thriving way, as opposed to just barely surviving or surviving. So asking those deep questions and getting them to see the importance of asking the questions and finding the inner resources is really important. And I can talk about some of the inner resources work that I do or state changes that I teach people to do. Also, too, not just the resources inside of them, but there are resources external to them. Like you said, I or you don't know everything, nor could we ever know everything.
Sure.
The client's not going to know everything. That's
Mm-hmm.
why originally they come to me to get some help. I help them go inside to find the answers to the questions they ask. But some of the answers might be external to them, like in a doctor, like in a financial expert, like
Sure.
wherever. So developing them to answer the questions, but also find the resources internally to them, but also external to them as well, is really important.
So what I'm hearing you say, and I believe, from the learning that I have received from you and others, and other growth and study that I've done as well, right? It's extremely important to me, and what I'm hearing from you too, is that I want them to be able to fire me. You want them to be able to fire you, and I think that comes from, Michael, that we believe that we're providing them not just maybe 6 months or 12 months of coaching, maybe working on one big area of their life, in addition to journaling, other pillars that's going on in their life, et cetera, right? And you're going to have growth in multiple areas because things overlap, right? If I might be working on one aspect of my life, it's going to make other things better in my life, right? But ultimately, what I look at too is that when we say that we want them to fire us, it's because that we've actually provided them what strategies, tools, and practices to continue this proven path that's worked for others and them, that if they stay within that program, right, on a lot of the tools that I've learned from you, things that you're doing in your life, things that I'm doing in my life, right, we do what we're asking our clients to do, right? And if they can stay in motion, that doesn't mean I'm not going to go get another coach for something, right? I got a business coach this past year to help me propel my business forward, right? But we're giving them a path that they can continuously use. What do you else do you have with that, Michael? Anything else?
Yeah, and I'll add, I've had clients come back to me to do deeper work.
Sure.
Because in my mind, and the way what I want to impart to my clients, it's an emergent process. There's no final end to human development. Life keeps throwing stuff at us, and we keep developing, growing, and developing and growing. So just because me and a client have reached the pinnacle of our work at a particular time doesn't mean that he or she or I will not regain a connection over time to do more work in a different area or deep in the process.
Sure.
So that's one thing. But I mentioned the physiological, psychological, social, and environmental. So let me just touch upon the social and environmental. On the social side, I find that, and I know you agree with me, it's really important because you even asked this question about who you surround yourself with, is to create social ecologies of people around you who support your growth and development. We call communities of practice. I also talk about healing communities and growth communities. So the more people you can surround yourself with who support you in particular areas of your life, physical growth or mental and emotional growth or spiritual growth, the better. And more comprehensive, even better. So more communities of practice, the better. And also to get your spouse, your kids, your workmates, your partners, all in alignment with your growth and development is really important too. Because if your spouse doesn't support your growth and development, as you know, so we've talked about this a lot,
they can sabotage it.
They can sabotage it, exactly. And if your workmates don't support your growth and development, they can sabotage it as well, or make it much more difficult. So it's also important to create communities that support your growth and development, and then people in your immediate family and workspace. And the environmental factors are important too. I mentioned briefly, and I like to talk about this as a via negativa and via positiva. Via negativa is like, what do I need to physically remove from my environment to support my growth? And what do I need to physically add to my environment to support my growth in any particular area? And I think that's really important too, because you do not want to waste your willpower points, if you want to put it that way, on not doing something in your environment. Like, oh, I don't want to eat that. I don't want to eat that. I don't want to eat that. Well, just remove that thing from your environment. If in fact it's distracting you, let's say sugar, like your thing is sugar, you don't want to eat standard American diet and crappy food. Well, best thing to do is not have that in your environment, so you're not eating it.
No cake, cookie, candy again in 2021, Michael. I did it in 2019. I did that, right? 2020, I had cake, cookie, candy again, but this year back to that.
Nice. So that's the via negativity. Let's remove things from your environment which do not support your growth and development. But then you can also add things to your environment, whether it's in the physical, whether it's physical training equipment, as an example, inspirational books or poems or artwork. If you're into spiritual development, you could have iconography, like, if you're Christian, you might have the cross or things around Jesus, or you're Buddhist, the Buddha, whatever your thing is. But you surround yourself in your environment with things that remind you constantly of the 1% growth you're seeking in various
1%. And so that's obviously what I've been pushing a whole lot. Right?
I know, that's what came to my mind.
Every way.
Exactly. So, I thought about that, yeah.
Michael, we're getting short on time. I'm trying to keep these to 30 minutes. I want to ask maybe one last question here with regards to maybe amount of time that someone might have to spend on something, understanding that maybe the 80% that's important to them, and then how much energy actually matters, and then maybe working on energetic patterns.
So when I talk about the psychological, the physiological, psychological, blah, 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 for me, the psychological breaks down into various pieces: mindset or cognition, emotionality, somatics, meaning how one experiences oneself and one's body, also one's own energetics. And energetics plays an important role for me for two reasons. One is, I think it's important for any individual to find out their own natural energetic patterns, how they show up best for certain activities at certain times of the day or certain times of the week. Once you know that, then you can organize your life as best as you can. There's still some obligations, obviously, with other people, but you can organize yourself as best as you can around your energy flows. And the second piece of that is state changes. So if you recognize how you're showing up in certain periods of your life, or in certain relationships, or certain times of the day energetically, there are certain practices that you and I teach to change the state. So you can go from low energy to high energy. If your energy is way too high, you can bring it lower. If you're too contracted, you can expand your energy. If you're too expanded, you can contract your energy. So there are lots of different practices that give you management of your own energetic systems. And I encourage people to learn how to do those and then practice them as you do. I know.
Awesome, Michael. I greatly appreciate it. I don't know. We had a couple of people online for some of the conversation here.
Oh, nice.
It will be they're off now, right? So the intention here is to take some Q&A for people that are willing to stay on too. I will try to answer some questions for anyone that asks them on the Facebook page or the YouTube page that went live. But if you could let everyone know about your website and any other programs that you'd like to let anyone else know about in our closing.
Certainly. So you can find my website. It's Michael, Michael, the letter D. It's my middle name, David, but Michael D. Ostrolenk, OSTROLENK.com. You can find me on Twitter, way too much, at Ostrolenk, MOSTROLENK. I'm also on Instagram under the same at symbol. I actually, instead of plugging my own work, I really want to plug yours. I was privileged to read your book in advance. I want to encourage everyone to read your book now that it's out, and really check out all the things that you promote, that you teach. And just for people listening, I send people to Dennis for various trainings that he offers, because I think he's a high quality instructor, and I really want to encourage people to check out your work. Yeah,
thank you, Michael. I greatly appreciate it. In addition to that, I'll throw in the stream here Michael's website too. It'll have other information and context as well. But I want to greatly thank Michael again. It was so important for me to have him on for my first podcast, Modern Warriors. I'm going to tell everyone that's listening, either live or that will be watching this in the replay. Stay tuned, folks. We are just starting, right? The online subscription, the portal's up and running. We have people that are coming on board now until the end of the month. If you use the coupon resolution, you will get 50% off the online subscription right now too, right? And so performance coaching talks every Saturday afternoon, in addition to someone that has expertise in what I believe in and what I promote and what we do here. So Michael's definitely the top in the field in performance mindset type coaching. And I've talked to a few other people already, to include Eric Paulson, Combat Submission Wrestling, and a few other people, some coaches and mentors that I've had in my life for sandbag and kettlebell. So stay tuned. We're going to have an exciting year coming up with other people as well. So Michael, thank you so much. I will end the broadcast here, and I'm going to keep you on board here for just a second, though. I think I'll be able to keep you on board here. Just 1 second.
Sounds good. Thanks, buddy.
Take care, everybody.